there, friends, lovers, welcome. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. We're glad you're here. I'm Robert Nasir. This is Amy Nasir, my co-host, always my better half, certainly the prettier half, the more decorative half.
We may be doing the Penn Jillette and Teller thing because...
It could be. I could have a silent partner today, yes. Why is that? Or should I say it?
Oh, just I had some dental work and it's kind of hurting. But nothing that ibuprofen can't fix. Yep.
Same dentist you convinced me to go to later this week?
Tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact.
Yikes! We'll see how that goes.
I might be mumbling a little bit.
Well, I won't push you too hard to be too talkative, but if it gets to be all too much, we might wrap up a little bit early.
I might do charades.
Charade? That's right. Won't work as well for the podcast listeners later.
It probably won't help. It's not a great form of communication.
Charades. That means your earring hurts?
No, sounds like.
Sounds like, of course.
2 syllables.
It tells you how much I know about charades.
Whatever.
We've done this before. And we'll do this again, but welcome. We're so glad you are here on this date.
Yay.
Sunday, April 18th, 2021. The 107th day of this year, your best year ever. I'm certainly working on making it mine. I'm kind of getting over all of the Easter Sunday foibles of the little accident I had. In fact, I won't even mention that because this is the day I don't need any sympathy. It goes to Amy for her dental challenges. There are 257 days left for you to make this your best year ever. 251 days until Christmas, 77 days until Independence Day. I'm already seeing the red, white, and blue in the stores. You know, we talked about how Christmas is becoming a year-round holiday. Stores are starting to sell fireworks year-round. Now I'm seeing the Independence Day decorations, July 4th decorations. We have worldwide listeners. Not everybody is from the States, but everybody should celebrate July 4th, Independence Day of the United States, the day in which the Declaration of Independence was stated, and that should apply to every nation on this whole darn planet. April 18th, and on this date, April 18th, in 1906...
What happened?
The San Francisco earthquake.
Oh, that
estimated to be 7.9 on the Richter scale, which was actually developed a few years later, but they back estimated it. San Francisco earthquake lasted less than a minute. Minor aftershocks, but it really all just boom, happened, done. 3,000 people dead, 30,000 buildings destroyed. The majority of the San Francisco population left homeless. What's amazing to me, again, about looking at these things in history is how natural disasters affect us now versus then. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake struck on the coast of Northern California, 5:12 a.m. 5:12 in the morning, Wednesday, April 18th, with an estimated moment magnitude of 7.9. Devastating fire soon broke out in the city. Lasted for several days, more than 3,000 died. 80% of the city of San Francisco was destroyed. Remembered as one of the worst and deadliest earthquakes in the history of the United States, the death toll remains the greatest loss from a natural disaster in California's history. What's interesting to me is that they rebuilt San Francisco.
They did.
Now, San Francisco in 1906, you can find the pictures online. We've got links to them in the show notes that will be available within 10 minutes after the end of the show. They rebuilt it, and they didn't just rebuild it. You know, we've talked about the Millennium Building, you know, this skyscraper in San Francisco that's been settling in and is even settling a little off to one side. The top of the building is now 14 inches off to one side versus when it was built.
When was it built?
Don't have the dates in front of me.
Oh, okay. Well, depending on that, I mean, if you have a skyscraper, you're going to have a little leeway on how it's built. The wind is going to hit it. It's going to shake and rock. I used to work in a
But this is a permanent 14-inch Tower of Pisa thing going on.
Oh, I see.
They have actually made changes to the foundation so that it will start settling in the other direction at a cost of $100 million. If I remember right. Again, I don't have it right in front of me. But what's interesting to me is you've got a city built on a fault line that wiped out 80% of the properties and 3,000 lives back in 1906, and they came back strong and said, well, let's rebuild the city. Even
on
though
rock and roll?
On rock and roll. We built this city on rock and roll. It just makes me wonder how comfortable the people who live on the San Andreas fault line are with that fact. And this is nothing new. This was a bigger thing even when I was younger. We had movies like Earthquake in 3D and I forget which version of shaking the theater chair is what it was called, Sense Around or something like that.
Surround sensor or sensor quake,
something.
surround quake.
And it's interesting because they build skyscrapers to be earthquake proof, but how earthquake proof? So there were like the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, the last big California earthquake was a magnitude 6.9, so it was right up there. And it wasn't in San Francisco, it was felt in San Francisco. But 10 miles northwest of Santa Cruz, named for the nearby Loma Prieta Peak, and responsible for 63 deaths, 3,757 injuries. The way in which they build now is so much better, and they build things to be earthquake-proof.
Can we pretend that we're in an earthquake?
We could.
So, all you need to do is do this.
These are more like the Star Trek special effects. So it is interesting to me that, we talked before, and Yaron has been talking about this on his show, and it's come up in the context of the COVID pandemic. Life includes risk assessment. Rational life includes a certain degree of risk assessment. Like
your wife bumping into you.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that she doesn't when you're
Spill
holding
coffee.
coffee.
Yeah. And that's something that you've got to accept about life, is that there's a certain amount of risk assessment. Mm-hmm. You decide what your risk tolerance is and you act accordingly. And I've been saying that throughout COVID-19. And people get it when it comes to earthquakes. They get it when it comes to deciding whether to live in California or live where tsunamis are more likely, to live down in Galveston, or to live in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. We accept a certain amount of risk in our lives, and then at some point we say, well, that's too much. That one's not for me. Also, incidentally, today is a happy 74th birthday to Hayley Mills. And this is what I have to ask the folks on the chat. It's good to see the folks on the chat here. Sorry, got distracted by my chat. Happy birthday, Hayley Mills, still alive, 74 years old, played Pollyanna. It was her first big Disney triumph. She was also in The Parent Trap, playing 2 roles. And that's interesting to me because coming up in the age of like Mary-Kate and Ashley and other famous twins, you would think they would hire twins, but no, they very cleverly got one actress to play 2 different roles. Brilliant. But my question is, I'm an optimist. And some people think I'm somewhat naive in that regard. I don't think so, but I think I'm a realist, and I think optimism is realism. I've been called a Pollyanna before.
By who?
Everybody. But somebody recently told me, Pollyanna, the film, this was not a naive optimist. Pollyanna in the movie has reasons for her optimism. She's more grounded than that. And looking at the articles on the film, it turns out that the writers of the script did soften the overly optimistic, naive touches that were in the original book, the original source material. So my question for the chat, if anybody in the chat, anybody who's on right now, has seen the film Pollyanna, the old Disney movie, A, is she a naive optimist, or is she simply a realistic optimist, a la me? And B, do you recommend I see the film? Does it hold up? So let me know what you think. Happy birthday to Hayley Mills. Finally, today is, and this is important, speaking of natural disasters and risk assessment, today is National Velociraptor Awareness Day.
It's very important to be aware.
People don't always think in the morning about, well, what would I do in the case of a velociraptor attack? Do I have a tire iron handy?
I know most people don't even have fire escape route plans.
No. Do you have a loaded shotgun at reach in case of a velociraptor attack? Do you I mean, sure, if one attacks, anybody can handle that. But are you ready if there's one coming from both directions?
And two velociraptors coming at you and a fire, what do you do?
I don't know how April 18th came to be National Velociraptor Awareness Day.
You need a couple of nets. You know, those nets that you throw on beasties, and then they get all like, I can't move.
They'd have to be really good nets. I'm sure they could chew through them, but their claws would get stuck. So, yeah, I guess they'd be semi-helpless there.
Yes.
But then that would be sad, seeing a velociraptor all stuck in a net.
It's only temporary.
That's right. It's tough to know what to do. So look up the resources. They're in the show notes. What have we been listening to this week?
Oh, well, let's see. John, actually, the other John, the playwright and poet and person, says, worried I will just annoy the velociraptor with a shotgun.
Well, the shotgun would just annoy a velociraptor. You know, it's funny. They've recently been making the point, they being whoever I've happened randomly to run into online, if velociraptors are actually on the same evolutionary track as birds, which is now the theory.
Yeah.
Is it possible that rather than the dinosaurs that we imagine in the movies, you know, Jurassic Park and whatnot, rather than roaring,
they would be like, wait!
Yes, or honk.
Honk!
We imagine, you know, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But, you know, that's more, we imagine that from gorillas or lions or roaring animals, mammals. But I don't know, I think velociraptors might have been, yeah.
Coo! Coo!
And they kind of made the babies in Jurassic Park make those kind of sounds, but I suspect the adults might have been more like, caw, caw. So the next time you're celebrating National Velociraptor Awareness Day, but it's making you imagine, you know, it in a frightening way, just think of, you know, the dinosaurs coming at you. Honk!
Chris says, bok, bok, bagok!
Exactly. Exactly. I think knowing that would help you keep your cool. Just thinking out loud here.
Well, what you need to do is, let's see. You just need to, you know, they're not going to come at you. They're going to be like chickens, and you're going to have to chase them down. You're going to be like, dun 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 as you're, you know.
I'm not sure the comparison to birds is going to hold up quite that well, but let's hope we never find out.
So, Holly says she has 2 greyhounds. I ain't scared of no velociraptor.
Well, it's like the old joke, though, you know. Dad, what do we do if a bear finds us in the woods? And he says, you know, I don't think we can outrun a bear. And the dad says, well, I don't have to outrun a bear. I just have to outrun you. So the greyhounds obviously could outrun the velociraptor. Would they, you know?
Well, you know, I mean, you know how dogs are with bears. You know,
I don't know how dogs are with
they'll be
bears.
Like,
no.
They'll have like this little teacup terrier or something, and the bear would come over. You've seen these. You know, the bear would come over, and the little terrier would be like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and then he would come at the dog? No, he would come at the bear, and the bear would run away.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. I like your happy ending version better than the way I'm imagining it would actually happen.
It's just one of those things where, you know, the dog has intentionality, as they say, and he has purpose, and in other words, he has conviction.
Well, that will get you through. That will give you a fighting chance, to be sure.
All right, we're very silly
What
already.
else? What have we been listening to this week?
Oh, gosh, I've been listening to all sorts of things about New Orleans.
We're going to New Orleans.
Da, da, da.
Heck, if we stay over, we might have to broadcast from New Orleans. At least our Wednesday show would have to be from New Orleans.
Yeah.
This could be so much fun. We're going to take you to New Orleans with us.
It'll only be on audio, unfortunately.
Yes, well, we'll see. We'll see what we do. We'll be 2-3 weeks out of our second vaccine, for people who think about such things, and we certainly do.
Yes.
And we're going to go vacation. We're going to go see what's going on in New Orleans, see what's open. Help them open up their other stuff up.
Yeah, listen to some music on Frenchman Street. We're going to learn about voodoo or vodou, however you want to say that.
I didn't know that. Amy is setting the itinerary. Amy is the New Orleans expert. So
I'm learning more and more. There's so much to know, guys.
So you've been listening to information about Nolans.
New
Nobody in
Orleans.
New Orleans says Nolans, by the way.
No.
It's just people who don't know about Nolans that call it Nolans.
Well, if
Don't
you
make
say
that mistake.
that, then you usually have sort of like African American Creole accent.
Oh, well, I don't have that, so I better stop it.
But they don't really say Nolans. It's more of you'd have to listen to it. But if anybody is really interested, we should put this in the show notes. I've got some really nice videos out there on YouTube where you have people with New Orleans accents, and they're so wonderful to listen to. I love their accent. It's sort of like Creole, Brooklyn, and they talk fast, and there's nothing Southern about it except for the fact that they say y'all. That's the only Southern part of whatever they say.
It's the only important part about talking Southern.
It's so fun. I love it, and I love the people. And I want to move there, and I want to take it over and make it a mecca for objectivism, and we can take over all of the churches.
Yeah, why is it so hard to find objectivists in New Orleans? We're like, who can we meet when we're down there? It's like, well, Dr. Bayer moved out of town.
I'll definitely have. We'll definitely intermingle with the people who practice voodoo. Yeah, voodoo is it's very interesting.
Okay, now you hear a double reason why I want to give a shout out. If anybody knows any Ayn Rand fans in New Orleans,
yes,
in Louisiana, let me know, so that I don't have to spend the whole week with Amy's voodoo friends.
And we're going to be meeting some
internet.
voodoo friends. Yeah,
I'm sure you will make sure that
love
happens.
It so much.
Well,
it's somewhat voodoo is like just so you know, it's not the Hollywood version. It's the it's basically it's ancestor worship. And it's very much in line, kind of like with Shintoism in that way.
But Shintoism is a bad thing.
Well, not right now. I mean,
see,
if it's connected to like an emperor or whatever it is.
I know it's more than that, but to most of us, when you say that, we think World War II. That's
if it becomes militarized, yes. Okay. But right now, it's not.
All right. Otherwise, I think most people know less about Shintoism than they know about voodoo. So it's kind of hard to say. Voodoo is like, anyway. Maybe it's just me. There's voodoo, a lot of stuff I don't know.
Voodoo is like velociraptors.
Okay, now I get it. So what else have we been listening to this week? I've been listening to a lot of Radio Ragnar because those are my peeps. Those are my peers, my fellows on the Clubhouse application. Besides that, I've been listening to Yaron. And Yaron Brook was on a YouTube channel last night called Modern Day Debate. And apparently this is just a channel that hosts debates. They just get people who are willing to come on and debate stuff. And so there's this... There's this young... I won't even call him a socialist because that's not the right word. There's a young modern guy who goes by the name Mouthy Infidel. And I think,
I'll listen to them if they play Jack Benny saxophone music, the yakety yak saxophone music, because that sounds also silly.
Oh, okay.
Especially coming from John, the playwright, who says, "I'm buying a Velociraptor doll and sticking pins in it."
That would help. That's good. Solid theory there.
And Chris is saying, "I'm writing Velociraptor limericks." So I'd like to see a debate going on with something of that subject matter. So anyway, you were talking about Mouthy Infidel and whoever that is, and Yaron Brook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they debated.
And it's kind of an interesting idea because this company doesn't pay anybody to debate. Now, normally, if you want Yaron Brook to come debate you, you've got to drop $3,000-$5,000 in his lap to make it worth his time and energy. But since they're already out there, they're already set up, it's all done over Zoom, so there's no travel involved. And in this case, since this weird young guy, Mouthy Infidel, actually has something like 750,000 subscribers, and that, it turns out, is more than Yaron has. It's substantially more than Yaron has. He got on there and did this debate with this kid. I shouldn't call him a kid. He looks like a kid, but he knows what he's talking
I'm
about
sure
to some
he's
degree.
a very old soul.
So that's what I've been listening to this week, and in connection with that, we were at the Village day before yesterday. We went to Greenfield Village and attended their opening day. And going to Greenfield Village, the historical museum at the Henry Ford in southeast Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, always puts me in a mind of earnestness.
Yes.
And what I mean by earnestness, I have to go to Noah Webster's dictionary. Why do I go to Noah Webster's dictionary to look up the definition of earnest?
Because Noah Webster's home is located in Greenfield
We
Village.
were just in Noah Webster's house. We were hanging at Noah Webster's place.
Hanging at his crib.
It was pretty cool. I mean, granted, he's been passed away for 125 years, but
Yeah.
it's still, good to hang out at his place. And according to the Webster's dictionary, earnestness is a mental state free of jesting or trifling. That's a very Webster's kind of dictionary because, most of his writing outside of his dictionary work was encouraging the kind of education that leads to a moral, upright life. So naturally, he would focus on a mental state free of jesting or trifling.
So I have not been earnest yet at all during this podcast.
Have you been free of jesting or trifling?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I've actually been embroiled in it.
Well, I do have a passion for earnestness, and if you want a piece of that passion, better get in gear. But the problem with Noah Webster's definition, as I'm sure several people have noticed, is it's all in negatives. It's free of jesting or trifling. Sure, but what is the positive? So I went to Cambridge Dictionaries, and we have this definition: determination and seriousness, especially when this is without humor. Now, earnestness and humor, I don't really see them as opposites. I see them as they're just not that related. But, humor doesn't have to be mocking or trifling or jesting. So that to me was that was not good. So I had to go one step further. I went to the Oxford Dictionaries, the public-facing version of the Oxford English Dictionaries. And this definition was the quality of being very serious and sincere. And that I like. And I think between the three, that really gets it. And why do I bring up earnestness? Because it's one of my top favorite character traits. A mental state free of jesting or trifling, determination and seriousness, especially when this is without humor, the quality of being very serious and sincere. I've talked about a lot of the way people fight nowadays on the internet, the social networks, the Twitter and Facebook and MeWe and Parler and Instagram. There's a lot of dankness, dank memes, sarcasm, sardonic behavior.
Yeah, dripping
cynicism.
with venom.
And
Yeah.
to me, earnestness is the antidote. And for me, what earnestness means, my definition would simply be honesty and benevolence. And as Ayn Rand fans, of course, we appreciate honesty as one of the top virtues.
Yes.
Ayn Rand writes that the mark of an honest man is that he means what he says and knows what he means. It's from her old textbook of Americanism. Earnestness. It's interesting. I was looking this up on Facebook. Josh Job had posted, finally got around to watching Ted Lasso. I put the call out previously for shows that are like Emily in Paris or Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Shows that have that kind of positivity and optimism. and Earnestness. And I'm still taking suggestions. If anybody's got any suggestions for shows that project that kind of earnestness. Incidentally, Jennifer mentions the importance of being earnest.
Yes.
Of course, I thought of that in making notes for this evening. And the funny thing is, of course, the importance of being earnest is a wry commentary on honesty and living a double life. And it's very funny. It's Oscar Wilde, and Oscar Wilde is invariably witty. And if you haven't read the play or seen one of the many films based on the importance of being earnest, always worth seeing. Josh Job wrote, finally got around to watching Ted Lasso, and it's funny, endearing, and wonderful. And Ted Lasso himself is exactly the kind of well-meaning, earnest, hopeful to the point of naivete, and childlike in his ignorance and curiosity that represents the best of what Americans can be. It may be set in Britain, but it is an American show, and I could not agree more. And obviously that's why I loved that show and recommend it, and am looking for more shows like it. Again, Emily in Paris has similar qualities. It's not exactly the same in that regard, but it's very similar. And again, I relate this to honesty. Earnestness is that forward-facing, that facing the world with both honesty and benevolence. Ayn Rand wrote in Galt's speech, honesty is the recognition of the fact that the unreal is unreal and can have no value, that neither love, nor fame, nor cash is of value if obtained by fraud, that to attempt to gain a value by deceiving the mind of others is an act of raising your victims to a position higher than reality, where you become a pawn to their blindness, a slave to their non-thinking and their evasions, while their intelligence, their rationality, their perceptiveness become the enemies you have to dread and flee, that you do not care to live as a dependent, least of all a dependent on the stupidity of others, or as a fool whose source of values is the fools he succeeds in fooling. That honesty is not a social duty, not a sacrifice for the sake of others, but the most profoundly selfish virtue man can practice, his refusal to sacrifice the reality of his own existence to the deluded consciousness of others.
Yeah, there is a lot of honesty that goes on in Emily in Paris, which I really appreciate. The character, Emily, she doesn't back down or shy away from actually saying what she thinks, even in very awkward situations.
Yes.
And Ted Lasso also doesn't. He shares that same trait of being true to himself and saying what he means, even in situations where things look grim or unhappy or. And that's really refreshing.
It is.
It takes courage.
So what happened this week that had me thinking about honesty?
What is it?
Bernie Madoff died.
Oh, that's right. He is room temperature.
Bernie Madoff died on Wednesday at the age of 82.
And I should say I may be joking about him, but, it is a sad life. As Robert will explain. It's not something to, say yippee and dance on the grave for or something, but...
It's we've talked about it before, we'll talk about it again, that some people say, well, sure, your philosophy says to be honest and to be rational and to trade, to not take advantage of other people, but, the kind of people who do that, who take advantage of others, who lie and cheat and steal to get what they want, even go to the point of crime, take, your average criminal or your organized crime, your mafioso. These people, when they're successful at it, because that's their philosophy, it works for them. And when they're successful, they're happy. How do you know they're not happy? I always answer, well, of course they know they're not happy. Sure, they achieve pleasure. They get a nice house. They achieve certain things they wanted. They have certain good times. But every day, they have to look in the mirror and know, I'm the bad guy. And they usually explain it with, well, that's the kind of world we live in. That's how you've got to be to succeed. But they've got to look in the mirror and know, I am the enemy of every person I meet. I am the bad guy.
And that's not a happy way to live.
And that's not a happy way to live. And no matter how corrupt your philosophy and how much you've convinced yourself, yeah, I'm the winner in this game, you can never achieve that kind of happiness that says, yeah, I'm the good guy.
But who are you a winner in the eyes of?
Yes.
Maybe other people?
Well, me and the other people who think like I
term.
do. Yeah.
Right.
But again, you've got to know at every moment, I'm the bad guy. I am somebody people should loathe, despise, and fear. Mm-hmm. So Bernie Madoff died on Wednesday. He did an interview shortly after that with Barbara Walters. And because you're not allowed to film in the kind of federal jail that he was in, she had to tell about it in an interview, posted in the show notes. And she made a couple points, and one of them, and Yaron has talked about this. Bernie Madoff said, in a credible fashion, it was absolutely, you could believe it, that he was a happier man now that he was in jail and the truth was out than he was in the 20 years leading up to him getting caught and convicted. Mm-hmm. 20 years he lived with the fear of being caught, with the constant tension of knowing I'm the bad guy, and if the truth comes out, I'm guilty. And 12 years after being convicted, he spent 12 years in jail. His own son committed suicide. He lived for 12 years behind bars and died behind bars. Mm. You know, I've quoted Richard Bach before, who once said, hedonism is no fun, which is kind of humorous when you put it that way. Hedonism is no fun. Oh. Vice is no fun. Being the bad guy is not a good state of mind. The other quirky thing that came out of the Barbara Walters interview is that Madoff did say, well, you know, most of the people I bilked should at least get their principal back. Some of the high number investors might get only 60% of it back. As if to somewhat soften the blow and kind of excuse what had happened. So it makes the point there that if you do what Bernie Madoff does, you're still making excuses. In other words, you're still living that philosophy of, well, this is the thing that happens to people. I'm just, trying to beat people at this game the way the world is. We talked before about character. You can't develop a Bernie Madoff character without swallowing a lot of bad ideas about what you think the world is and how things work. And that's why ideas matter. It's why when I quote lengthy parts of Galt's speech, like that definition of honesty, that stuff matters. The right ideas matter.
So I think Mary Eileen caught that you said that Barbara Walters did an interview with Bernie Madoff after he died.
Did I say after he died?
I didn't.
I thought I said after he was convicted, but I may well have said after he died. Barbara Walters went up to heaven, like Bernie Madoff would be in heaven if such a thing could exist.
So obviously Barbara Walters is a psychic who does,
That's right.
seances
down in New Orleans.
Although she's dead too, so I don't know. Maybe she's doing that.
In any event, good catch there, I think, because if you caught that, you're not the only person who did. Earnestness. Hedonism is no fun. Earnestness is one of the qualities I admire most.
When you were talking about this, I thought, Earnest, the first reaction that I had to that adjective is that it kind of connotes respect when you're listening to somebody, that you're earnest, you're genuine, you're genuinely giving somebody your attention. You're not just standing there thinking of something else entirely. Of course, that wouldn't be honest if you were in a kind of relationship like that, but or conversation. But
you're right. Earnestness connotes also that eagerness and that passion that you actually are there and you care about what's happening.
Yeah, and if you don't, you should speak up and just say, hold on a second, I'm not following you, or this is not something I'm interested in, possibly. Yeah, conversations are interesting, especially when you're in a conversation with somebody who is, going on and on and on about things when they're not checking in with you and when they're not pausing to see if you want to say something.
Yeah, so I would encourage people to value that quality and to manifest that quality as best they can. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast, of course, already do that. I had posted a little while back, your worldview, and especially your view of people, their virtue and benevolence, their value and inspiration to you, is shaped by the attitudes and actions of two groups. Your worldview. Number one, the people you choose to have in your life. And number two, it is shaped by yourself. Now, why would I choose to separate the groups in this manner? Because only one of those two groups is the one over which you have direct control. Fortunately, that latter group, you, is also the one you spend the most time around. So you want to live in a happier world? Choose to focus on that which makes you happy. Do you want to live in a more polite world? Choose to focus on that. Excuse me. Let me reread that. I'm doing this from memory, and I shouldn't have done that. You want to live in a more polite world? Be more polite.
Yes.
Done. Do you want to live in a world of ambition and inspiration? Be more ambitious. And focus on the inspirational in yourself and in those in the world around you. There are many reasons, many and intertwined, behind the truth that people are generally about as happy as they've made up their minds to be. Some of the reasons are simple and some of them are complex, but the truth is unassailable.
There's the phrase, be the change you want to see in the world.
Be the change you want to see in the world. The only problem with that is it implies that as soon as you change, the world around you will start changing.
No, it won't.
And the fact of the matter is that what changes is your perspective on the world.
Yes.
And then over the course of time,
Yeah.
by being that way, you will choose better people.
Yes.
You will choose to be in contexts in which you see those changes. If you are good and kind and efficacious and productive, if you are sharp, the dull, the laggards, the snarky, the sarcastic, the cynical, those people will fade away from your life and you will find yourself surrounded by better people. If you're going to the American Atheists Convention and you cancel that and decide to go to OCON instead, you will immediately improve the quality of the people around you. I pull that example out of thin air, and it's probably kind of rude to the American atheists. And I know there are better ones out there, but if you want to see benevolence and kindness, they're not the best people to go to. The best people to go to that I found are more the kind of people you'll find at OCON or TOSCON.
Although there was a bit of a change about 10 years ago, and somebody came up with the idea of being a friendly atheist.
Oh, good. Well,
yeah.
that's what we need.
Yeah.
In my mind, that.
Or somebody, or whatever you want to be, a friendly philosopher, however. But speaking of that, there's a really nice quote that I found by Seneca, which
Stoic.
was Stoic from I'm not sure when he lived, but a long time ago. It's associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach.
Yes.
I really liked that.
Well, in the coaching world, we say that you are the average of the 5 people you most associate with. And the premise is that if you associate with better people, they will tend to encourage better behavior in yourself. And it goes along with ideas that your net worth is your network. Your network is your net worth. So.
Well, we do have, I believe, a limerick of some kind, or poem, written by John.
I thought Chris was going to beat us
No.
all to a Velociraptor limerick, but apparently
No,
John goes first.
John the playwright says,
Do you have the voice to read that out, or would you like me to read it?
you do that.
An earnest Velociraptor squawked at a fence that had zapped her. I don't like being locked or electrically shocked. I demand a few words with my captor.
Very good, John. Thank you so much.
Nice work.
Oh, and by the way, I'm a little mumbly because I had some dentistry done.
Yeah, anybody
So-
getting into the show late here, we talked earlier about Amy had dental work. And
So I'm
you've
not
lasted longer than I thought. It's
Yeah, oh, whoa.
wow, yeah. Good
Well,
work, good work.
I'm not expending as much energy.
Well, I have one more reading today, and so I'll use my voice for it.
Ooh.
First, to wrap up my previous comments, in response to an interesting article on politeness, which Amy and several other friends had shared, I'm reminded that politeness is extraordinarily selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And I do mean extraordinary. In the ordinary sense, politeness is certainly, more honey than vinegar,
Yeah.
leading to all sorts of net good results. And it's fun. It feels good to be polite. And heck, you can feel all morally virtuous if you're into that sort of thing. But in the extraordinary sense, to be polite is to create a polite world.
Yes.
Just as to give love is to create a loving world. To give respect is to create a respectful world. At least in your immediate sphere of influence and experience, which has far, far more impact over time and in broad contexts, personal and professional, than folks sometimes realize. So one of the things I thought about in trying to increase the level of earnestness in my life was poetry and musicals. Amy and I don't read a lot of poetry.
We should, though.
We should. And we don't watch a lot of musicals. And those are both areas in which they almost seem too earnest. They almost seem not genuine or real. Mm-hmm. They're over the top. And they're not. Because I know people who are into musicals who are absolutely earnest about them, love them, and express that joy and that passion. And the same thing with poetry. So I've been trying to read more poetry. Amy, incidentally, does read poetry, but only during Halloween. She's got some of the best Halloween stories in poetry, and that's when
right.
she will read poems. Well, she's read them on the podcast before.
That's right. Or old, Christmas, medieval Christmas limericks or
yes,
songs.
Christmas.
Medieval songs. But speaking of rhyming, Chris does have a nice one.
Oh, goodness. This one might be a tongue twister. Let's see. Time travel huntress Alexis outclassed the best of both sexes. After she trapped her Velociraptor, she rounded up several T-Rexes. That's smooth.
Well,
that's good.
Huntress Alexis must be a pretty powerful lady.
Time travel huntress Alexis. Well, that's how you get back to where the dinosaurs are. That was good. Really good. We could have a contest between those two.
This is the funniest thing. Jennifer says, "Best wishes to your teeth."
And posts the face with the anguished teeth-clenching expression, which is just right for the moment. There we go.
Please send my teeth positive vibes, everyone.
So when I've read a couple of verses, I've read, Burton Braley.
Yes.
And probably his three biggest, most famous ones. Those are always good, easy reads and always inspiring. I've read Robert Frost on the occasion of the anniversary of his one of his poems being published. So today I'm going to go a little bit harder, not much, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And I'm going to read a Psalm of Life. And the reason why this one came up for me is because it mentions briefly earnestness. A psalm of life, what the heart of the young man said to the psalmist. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust art thou, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment, and not sorrow, is our destined end or way, but to act, that each tomorrow find us further than today. Art is long, and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave, in the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life. Be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God o'erhead. Lives of great men all remind us, and we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait.
Very nice.
A Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth
Where did you find that?
Longfellow. Actually, several of our objectivist friends have posted this on Facebook in the past.
Nice.
And a quick search for Earnest and Earnestness turned that one up.
So, A Psalm of Life by
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Longfellow, yes. Oh, hello,
Yes.
Andrea. She says hello.
Hello there.
Oh, and Holly says, I do prefer reading other forms of writing, but once in a while a poem will resonate enough to seek more.
Good. And poems should always be read out loud. The reason I mention poems and musicals is that those are two categories of things that will sometimes get me here and make it hard for me to keep speaking, get me choked up, sometimes even get the tear in the eye. There are certain pieces of music that do that as well, and I'm trying to embrace more and more of those in my life. I'm finding as I get older,
Yes.
I'm becoming a little bit even-keeled.
Oh.
And I'm realizing I don't want to get even-keeled. I want to get wrecked. I want the tears to come out. I want the juice. I want the passion. I want the stuff. And I
Right.
think
Right.
that steely resolve to remain earnest is going to help me in that. So I won't read pieces that long in the future, but don't be surprised if a poem or two are read again during the podcast and even get me a little choked up.
Jim says, speaking of musicals, his second favorite movie musical is Oliver. I don't think we've actually seen that.
Not together.
No. Okay, no, I haven't.
But
Oh, yeah,
Jim-
that's right, you have.
But Jim, you can consider yourself one of us.
Good. I haven't seen it yet, so I can definitely take a look at it.
In fact, in high school, my girlfriend sang that song.
I was not Robert's girlfriend in high school.
No, but all of my best girlfriends were named Amy, and
And that's true.
Jim will know that. How was your girlfriend singing that line? And the answer is my girlfriend actually played the Artful Dodger. There weren't that many female roles, and so she convinced the producers of the play to let her take on the role of the Artful Dodger. And they didn't recast it as a woman. She shortened her hair and played a man's role,
Yeah.
which was pretty damn cool at the time. So yes, consider yourself as one of the songs from that musical. So I'm trying to embrace the things that get me choked up.
Mm-hmm.
And earnestness is one of those qualities that help me approach those things. And I want more of that for all of you. I want you guys crying out there the way I cry when I hear my favorite songs.
You know, I cried today.
Did you?
Yeah. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but I was... so we're going to New Orleans
Yes.
next month. And I swear, every time I go someplace, I try to find, the most sublime, most inspiring story, heroes, heroes to look up to visit, to say hello to express gratitude to. And there, you've got the Creole and African American community, Haitian community, well, it's a whole mix is Creole, down in New Orleans, and they have so many stories to tell. The story of what happened in the Treme, which is the kind of the geographic location right behind the French Quarter, and all sorts of struggles that African Americans have been through. But they have such an incredibly rich history. It's extremely fascinating. And I am just so enamored with it. And there is actually during Katrina, there was the lower Ninth Ward that was very much highly flooded. And to this day... Devastated. To this day, they haven't received much help. I'll just say that. And there's actually a museum about this. And I looked online. I looked at this museum, this organization that they have. I think it's like the Lower Ninth Ward Museum or something that it's called. And I really want to go. They have so many inspirational programs that they have running. They are just extremely resilient people and an extremely resilient community. And I am just absolutely awestruck by the whole thing. Yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to my future peeps and future friends in New Orleans, because I feel like I'm going to make some.
Good. Well, we're going to go see what's going on there and what we can do to be a tiny little touristy part of it.
Yes.
Throw some money their way. So my assignment for the week is mindful irreverence. And if that sounds like the opposite of what I'm talking about, let me
really
explain.
Funny.
Now, what I want to do, and you can join me on this. As always, my
Right.
assignment for the week is for you to join me on. Here's what you do. Catch yourself taking an irreverent approach or stance
Yeah.
in responding to or addressing an issue. And ask yourself, might a more earnest, straightforward, positive, value-oriented approach be more effective?
Ah, yeah.
Or more heartening, or more empowering, or more entertaining, maybe even more fun than the irreverent approach, or the cynical approach, or the sarcastic approach.
Right. Right. Or the hopeless approach.
Now, sometimes you're
Yeah.
going to be dealing with a situation where, no, the right thing to do is to, whatever the situation, laugh at this thing that's happening, or pick on this idiot, or insult this person. Sometimes the right approach is going to be a negative one. But, again, my assignment to myself for this week is to catch myself in that moment of taking an irreverent approach or stance in responding to an issue or addressing a situation. And I'm going to ask myself, might a more earnest, straightforward, positive, value-oriented approach be more effective, more heartening, more empowering, and maybe even more fun? And then either way, act accordingly. In fact, I do have a Post-it note for this week that I'll be putting up. My Post-it note for the week says, those of you who are watching the video version see it already, virtue is fun.
Yes. Well, not only is it fun, but it gives you such a more deep, fulfilling meaning of life, and it makes you appreciate your values more. But Jim is asking, can you give us an illustration with regard to what was that? Mindful
irreverence?
Yes, I think that's.
Yeah,
I think that's what you're saying, Jim.
I have a meme that I've posted on the internet several times. I could probably post it 100 times a year. And it's a plain black meme. There's no picture or anything. It just says, sarcasm always works on the internet. And I post it anytime somebody is being I shouldn't say anytime. I've only posted it a couple times. But I post it when somebody is being ineffective in using sarcasm on the internet. And if I had to guess, if I had to put a number on it, how many times does sarcasm work well on the internet versus how many times does it work poorly? My guess would be that it works well approximately, just throwing a number on it, it works well approximately never, and it works poorly, just approximately, just an approximation, it works poorly approximately 100% of the time.
Yeah, well now, knowing Jim, who's asking this question, illustrating this, knowing Jim, I don't know Jim that well, but from what I know of you, Jim, you're a pretty earnest fellow to begin with.
Yes, Jim is extremely earnest.
So, which is wonderful, and
I'm guessing you're probably sympathetic to this perspective. Incidentally, and it's not sarcasm, it's exaggeration. I'm exaggerating. There are times when sarcasm, what was that word I just said? Sarcasm? There are times when sarcasm is effective. And there are times when sarcasm isn't particularly effective, but it's very funny. So I'm not saying there's no place for sarcasm out there. I'm saying that people fall back on it when it's really not effective or not
when there is
not forwarding what they're trying to accomplish.
Sadness and hate and anger and turmoil in the world, irrationality in the world. A lot of people will want catharsis, and I think that sarcasm gives them that. Or that irreverence, ha ha ha,
Yes.
you laugh it off and everything.
It's the only explanation for 90% of the political memes out there, because they don't inform you. All they do is entertain you. All they do is rile up the troops.
Right,
and you got to do that. That's a function that's got to be done. You got to keep the troops fired up.
Right, but here's a question, and Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which everyone should read because it's the best. There's the phrase, "Who is John Galt?" And it's a phrase that basically means, why bother with life? It doesn't mean anything anyway. And I kind of wonder if some of the characters or some of the people who say it in this universe of Atlas Shrugged would have said it in a sarcastic or in a kind of a ugly, laughing sort of way. Ha ha! Who is John Galt? Like that.
Well, several of them do, because people use it in different ways. It always has a similar meaning, but it's used in very different contexts.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in the initial scene on the train. The train is stalled, and it's because the switch isn't working. The light isn't working at the switch, so they don't know if they can proceed safely. And Dagny Taggart asks, well, what are you going to do next? And they're, well, we're just waiting for orders, and nobody's doing anything about it. And when she asks, well, what are you going to do? And somebody says, well, who is John Galt? And his coworker says, he means don't ask questions that there ain't no answers to. So different people use it in the book in different ways. But it's always a way of dismissing both knowledge and values.
Right.
And with the air of, well, who are you to think that you know the answers? Just like, who was John Galt to walk out on us?
Right. Chris mentions that Francisco, one of the other characters in Atlas Shrugged, said it sarcastically, or wryly.
Yes.
And then I guess it was a conversation with Dagny at the Wayne Falkland.
Yes. And he was being a little indulgent there because he knew how she would take it, but he also knew that it was literally the answer to what they were talking about. Yeah. What took you away from me, Francisco? It was John Galt.
That's right. I need to read that for the 25th time. Oh my goodness, or listen to it. Yes. Hey, Linda Cordair of Cordair.com.
Cordair.com.
Quint Cordair Fine Art Gallery.
That's
for
right.
all of your wonderful inspirational needs for being inspired by beautiful sculpture and painting.
And don't forget, Clubhouse users. Look for the Aesthetic Cafe. When it appears, you need to be in there.
Yes. Thank you, Chris, for that reminder. That was such a nice scene.
So,
oh my gosh.
So again, if anybody wants to share with me the Post-it note of the week, this is what will be up on my, I think this one will go on the bathroom mirror. Sometimes it's a computer screen. Virtue is fun. it's funny because that popped out even when I wasn't thinking of the Richard Bach quote, which is, hedonism is no fun. But I have put that on a note before, too. Yes, hedonism is no fun, and virtue is fun. Being good is so fun.
It's freeing. It's fun.
It's not just where the fun comes from. You can be light. You can be,
you can be confident. You really can't have fun unless you're confident.
Think of the lighthearted stories in the early Ayn Rand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Ayn Rand put the story Good Copy out in front of a few of her friends.
Yes.
And said, yeah, read the story, tell me what you think. And, you know, people had different reactions, but when they found out she wrote it, they couldn't possibly be you. It's so light, and it has nothing to do with the bigger questions of living on Earth. Mm. And Ayn Rand said, well, it's just the one big question of, is happiness on Earth possible? Mm-hmm. And when I think, yes, virtue is fun, that's what I think of.
Wonderfulness. You know, I want to give a special shout out to Chris and to John for sending us
limericks were great.
The Velociraptor poems.
Yes.
Probably I love
have
it.
to copy and paste and post those on my wall.
Yes.
Although they may do that themselves. So good. But we've been running a little long, so I'm going to remind you that show notes, including links to all of this episode's inspiring, informative, entertaining, and otherwise useful content will be posted within 10 minutes of the end of the show. If you have questions or comments, you can post them in the show notes, in the comments, or in the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. If you would like to join the amazing people who support the show financially, you can do so. Monthly contributions can be made at patreon.com/RobertNasir or one-time contributions at paypal.me/RobertNasir. And you don't have to remember that. All you need to do is go to robertnasir.com, where you will find links to all that stuff I just said. Links to the Facebook and YouTube feeds, all the past shows, the contribution links. It's all there at robertnasir.com. And with that said, we would like to thank you for joining us. Another Sunday, it's gone by too quick, but I earnestly wish you success, and I earnestly wish you flourishing.
Yes.
I earnestly wish you an earnest approach to the challenges of life, and I'm sure that will be met with appreciation by your fellow valuers. And as all, I'm just looking to see if I missed any comments. There's so many good ones. I will be rereading them later.
There's a lot of them, but I love them all.
Love you all. In fact, that's my final wish for you. Objectivists, we shouldn't be wishing things. We should be saying that I know with rational certainty that you will find, and yet I also wish you. I wish you love. Y'all have a great week.